Hey guys, today is going to be all about taking the internal temp of the meat that you are cooking. We will be going over the different types of thermometers you can use, the temperature each piece of meat needs to get to, and some tips and tricks on how to read that internal temp, just to make sure that you are consuming the safest meat possible, that it's cooked all the way through and it's killed all the bacteria that it may have had. So first off, let's go over some thermometers. There's two different types. There is instant read and meat thermometer. So an instant read, I have one of these at our home. You can get them in analog or digital, whichever one you prefer. And these are meant to be put in the piece of meat after it has cooked. So you're checking that internal temp after the cooking process. These are not meant to go in the oven with that piece of meat. Now the meat thermometer is going to look a lot like this, but this part of it's going to be a whole lot bigger because they are meant to go into the piece of meat, into the smoker, oven, grill, wherever you're cooking it at. They can withstand all of that heat. And the reason why you may want one of those meat thermometers is because you want to continue to check on that internal temp of your meat, but you may not want to open that door and let some of that heat out during the cooking process. Okay, so now let's move on to what does that piece of meat need to get to? What does the internal temp need to be considered safe? So, like I said before, it all depends on the type of meat you're cooking, but also the form of that meat. So for pieces of beef, lamb, pork, even fish, those need to reach 145 degrees internal temp. Whereas ground meat, you have your ground beef, ground turkey, ground chicken, that needs to reach that 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And then chicken, so chicken breast, chicken tenderloins, chicken nuggets if you're home making those, they need to reach an internal temp of 165 degrees. So, and all of these internal temps need to stay at that temp for at least 15 to 20 seconds. So what that means is when you put your thermometer into the piece of meat, it reaches 165, say we're cooking chicken breast. It gets to 165, it needs to stay at 165 for 15 to 20 seconds. If at the end of that time frame it's still at 165, it's safe to consume. Now, if any point during that 15 to 20 seconds it drops down to 160, 155, you need to pop it back in the oven until it keeps at 165 for that 15 to 20 seconds. And then you can safely consume that piece of meat. Now that we have talked about different thermometers and different temperatures, let's go over some tips and tricks on how to take those internal temps. So I'm gonna use my chicken breast example. We've all seen a chicken breast. There's a thick side and then a thin side. When we are taking internal temps, we wanna focus on the thicker portion of the meat. Okay, so we're gonna only focus on that thick part because if that thick part is cooked all the way through, the thin part will definitely be cooked all the way through. Okay, so with that piece of meat, we have located the thickest part, and then we will be inserting our thermometer, whichever thermometer you are using, into that portion of the meat. Now, you want to be careful. You don't want to put the thermometer all the way through because you will be taking the temp of the pan, which will definitely be 165, maybe even 200 degrees. You want to make sure that you are only inserting the thermometer halfway through that thickest portion. So once you get halfway, you're going to get the most accurate internal temp. And like I said, if it reaches, like chicken breast, if it reaches 165 for 15 to 20 seconds, I'm safe to eat it because I know the rest of that piece of meat is definitely at 165 if the thickest part is. All right. Okay, so I hope you guys learned some cool little tips and tricks on how to take your internal temp of your meat and also the difference of internal temp depending on what meat you're cooking. Bye guys.